Well, this week we saw President Obama decide against releasing those abuse photos for fear of inciting anti-American reactions. Obama has also brought back military tribunals, which he campaigned against. Howard, is this guy, Dick Cheney, out of office, influencing the policy of this administration?
I think so, and I know from talking people close to people close to him, including his daughter Elizabeth, that he thinks so. That he thinks it's his duty. With Dick Cheney, it's hard to separate the apocalyptic from the political, and he really believes that Obama was out from the first day in office to dismantle what Bush and Cheney had done on tribunals, on Guantanamo, on enhanced interrogation techniques. He took it as a personal affront as well as a danger to the country. So he's fighting back on a personal level and has been practically from day one.
Well, you say on a personal level, but is this to help Obama or hurt him?
Well, he thinks it's to hurt Obama and thereby make the country safer. I don't think anybody questions his belief in the efficacy of the policies that Cheney, put in. It's just everybody else in the world who has questions about whether those policies, in fact, did make us safer.
This administration has been very careful. I think Rahm Emanuel has something to do with it, and the president, to pick its enemies. They like Rush Limbaugh. They like Sean Hannity, people like that. Middleweights they can handle. Do they want Dick Cheney as their enemy, and do they see him that way right now?
I think they don't mind at all if Dick Cheney is front and center on this issue. They think, if he's the messenger, that's great for them. What they have to worry about is that he doesn't land any punches, that this argument doesn't have greater resonance, that somehow we are less safe, because that potentially could hurt them. But anytime we're talking about Dick Cheney, people in the White House are delighted.
What do you think he's up to?
He's afraid. He's very afraid. That's why he's doing this. There's no other reason for him to do it.
He's afraid he's going to be nailed on torture.
He authorized, and we now know this, the torture of human beings. We know this from the Red Cross. We know this from the Office of Legal Counsel memos. We know this from the Senate Armed Services Committee report. We know the policies that he enforced and pioneered and insisted on led to the torture of hundreds, thousands of human beings. Now, those are war crimes. If the government has the power to torture evidence, where are conservatives on this? Where are conservatives who believe in restraining executive power and the dangers of torturing people? This is a very profound issue. It's the biggest issue of the last 8 years. This man is very afraid, and he has every reason to be afraid.
The most troubling news we got this week was that he ordered further interrogations of a prisoner after we went into Iraq to try to use that prisoner to justify the attack on Iraq, the invasion, as somehow proving that Saddam was involved with 9/11, even though it was a totally bogus testimony.
We know the man who interrogated Zubaydah to begin with said, we got everything we want, and Cheney came in and said, torture him to prove the Qaeda-Saddam connection. That is an unbelievable abuse of government power.
Okay, let me ask you about what Cheney's up to politically. Is he trying to set up a situation whereby when and if this country's hit at any point in the next several years, he can say, I told you so?
Well, he'd be in the position to say that, but I think that there's something else going on here. I think normally when historians write about the legacy of a particular presidency, that happens years hence. Right now, this legacy will be determined in part by what the courts determine and what the congressional leaders determine with the hearings that will take place on Capitol Hill on how they deal with this issue of torture, with the Bush Six, what happens to Bybee and others. And I think when Cheney makes these statements, it's quite possible that he's also trying to influence, if not directly the White House, the debate that goes in within the White House. We know that this president is very deliberative. He hears from both sides on these debates about torture memos and other things. By Cheney speaking out in this way, he very much is, if not influencing directly the administration, influencing that debate inside that room with the national security debate, and those within the CIA, those within the Pentagon that are very uncomfortable about some of the directions that this administration is taking.
That's why he's trying, and I agree with a lot of what Andrew says about Cheney's concerns here. But I think Cheney's effort here is to surround that discussion with all the other questions about the policy that was erected by the administration, the detention camps, the surveillance, the state secrets arguments. He's trying to surround it as much as he can, thereby to argue if you dismantle this whole thing, including, by the way, this very controversial thing, we're going to be less safe. But the big argument is whether we were, in fact, made safer by any of that or taken on adventures that made us less safe.
Well, let's take a look at the Matthews meter. To the bottom line here, we asked the whole Matthews meter, 12 our regulars, is Dick Cheney's recent rhetoric actually influencing President Obama's national security decision-making? Well, 8 say no, no effect. But 4 including you two chaps, Andrew and Howard, say yes. So you think he's having a political effect?
Yes, because Obama isn't going to take the bait on these release of photos, for example, so Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney can go out and say, you're endangering our troops. No, Obama's not going to do that. Obama is going to let the process take its due course.
But is he being moved by Cheney?
In terms of short-term tactics, yes, because he's a smart politician. But long-term strategy, I don't think so at all. Look, the things that Howard mentioned, like indefinite detention, or indeed even rendition, and indeed keeping Bob Gates, and increasing troops in Afghanistan, and delaying exit from Iraq. What more does Dick Cheney want?
Savannah, you're at the White House. You're at the White House. When you get up in the morning and you go over to that White House, West Wing, do you sense they're listening for the footsteps of Dick Cheney coming at them every day?
No, I think they would scoff at the notion that somehow Cheney is setting the national security agenda in any way, shape, or form. However, one cannot get away from the fact that this president is governing more from the center on national security issues with the decision about the military
And he did that way before Cheney started piping up.
That would be
Misha,